we're going to pivot and talk about quarterbacks in general because this offseason, there are quite a few quarterbacks that can be on the move, that can be traded, and we're going to rank them right now. I have 6. I have 7. I have 7 quarterbacks that can be traded.
I also have 7, but a couple of these I was questionable on. Like, I don't know how many of these guys are actually really potentially going to be moved. I actually have an 8th now in mind that will be right at the bottom of the list. I don't think he's higher than he might slide in 7th.
So I'll go first. My number 1 quarterback is Deshaun Watson, of course. He threw for 4,823 yards, 33 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. He is by far the best quarterback that's on the trade market right now. Well, that can be traded. He's not on the trade market. And the Texans have said that they are not going to move him. And part of me believes that. We were going to make a segment about it, but I'll just talk about it right now. I don't think Deshaun Watson gets traded. I think the Texans franchise is extremely stubborn. They are trying to prove a point, and this might sound like a hot take, but I expect Deshaun Watson to retire if he does not get traded.
That's what for me, I don't think they want to trade him, and I agree. I think they've shown throughout the process they're very stubborn, but I think it's going to get to a point that Deshaun Watson and his agent are going to play hardball, which I don't think they've done yet. I think they've been very cordial in the way they've handled things so far, and maybe some things have leaked, but Deshaun Watson really hasn't had anything to say about it. It hasn't been this media circus. If it starts getting a little bit deeper into the offseason and nothing has happened and they still hold that same stance, I think the Deshaun Watson's camp is going to make this very ugly. And at some point, you'd have to imagine the Texans are smart enough to cut their losses before Deshaun Watson just runs his value into the ground, as much as Deshaun Watson possibly can, because his value is always going to be high at a 25-year-old superstar quarterback. But right now, it's kind of realistic to think you could get 4 or 5 first-round picks for him. At what point do teams start saying you're losing leverage? Because, I know the way the CBA is written up, it is all power to the owners, but Deshaun Watson is one of the only guys in the league that can turn the tables just a bit. So I think it's going to get ugly before it gets better.
This situation reminds me of when Carson Palmer wanted to trade out of the Cincinnati Bengals, and because they did not grant it, he retired. It seems like it's trending that way, but my second quarterback is Derek Carr.
By the way, I think it's pretty obvious Deshaun Watson is one for me.
So I also think that the best fit for Deshaun Watson is not the Jets or the Dolphins. I think it's the San Francisco 49ers. And they have 50-plus free agents. So they have the cap space to get Deshaun Watson if they want to. I think that's the best possible fit for Deshaun Watson. Next QB is Derek Carr. 4,100 yards, 27 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. I think the best fit for him is the Washington football team, but I don't think he gets traded. John Gruden has said, or the organization has said, that they're not going to trade him. We'll see how much that's true, but if they don't, then, he stays in Oakland. He stays in Las Vegas, but if they do, I think the best fit would be the Washington football team. The next quarterback, Carson Wentz, we talked about him. This past season, an off-year, 2,260 yards, 16 touchdowns, 15 interceptions. The best fit for him is the Indianapolis Colts. The next QB is Teddy Bridgewater. Threw for 3,700 yards, 15 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. He's kind of a game manager. He is a game manager. And I really can't think of a best fit for Teddy Bridgewater. I think that Teddy Bridgewater stays with the Carolina Panthers. The next QB is Jimmy G. When healthy, he threw for about 4,000 yards in 2019, 27 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. And I think the best fit for him is the Patriots or the Houston Texans in terms of where he could get traded. I think that if the 49ers and the Texans make a deal, it's Jimmy G plus picks for Deshaun Watson, and he might end up in Houston. And then the last two quarterbacks on my list are Sam Darnold. To this point, he has been a first-round bust, but I think the best fit for him are the Denver Broncos, and the Chicago Bears. And then the last quarterback is Marcus Mariota. It was just announced that the Raiders are willing to trade Marcus Mariota and not Derek Carr. I'm not sure what team would best fit would best fit Marcus Mariota, but he could just be a depth guy. We'll see what happens with him. But those are my quarterbacks. Deshaun Watson 1, Derek Carr 2, Carson Wentz 3, Teddy Bridgewater 4, Jimmy Garoppolo 5, Sam Darnold 6, and Marcus Mariota 7.
This was a hard one because it depends on who you're considering, like, on the block. Because I have one guy in here that you didn't have, but his name has been floated around a little bit. And also, take into consideration with my list, I was considering it a win-now situation. Like, if I'm the Colts and I think I can compete, who I would want to bring in immediately. So, obviously, it started with Deshaun Watson. No need to even read the stats. I think that's pretty obvious. Number 2, I have Derek Carr. A lot of the same reasons you said. I think he's super underrated because he's in a situation in Oakland that's a little bit shaky, but his 1 year that he was healthy and everything around him was solid, he led them to one of their best seasons in recent memory. So I like Derek Carr a lot. At 3, I have Kirk Cousins. I don't know if he is available, but I did hear his name floated around a bit in a couple different rumors.
Mike Zimmer said that he's our guy.
Okay, so if he was available, I would have him at 3. I think he's been another one of those guys the last couple of years that's flown under the radar, but he's a really good quarterback. Next, I have Carson Wentz. It would take a little bit of a rebuilding project, but I think out of young guys that are available, he probably has the highest ceiling. We've seen him play at an MVP caliber level, and it just takes a little bit of retooling, which will be difficult, but could pay off in the long run. Then I have Sam Darnold. I, again, think he has a pretty high ceiling, but it's all about getting him in the right infrastructure. I think the Colts would be a really good spot for him. Get him behind a great offensive line and maybe bring in a weapon in free agency. Put him with Frank Reich. You would have a really good formula for success there for a guy that is the youngest starting quarterback in the league as of opening day this past season. And even in the past 2 years where he hasn't been great, you've seen flashes that he can really be special. So does he ever find that potential? I would lean towards no, but it's there. It's definitely inside of him. It's just about bringing it out and putting him in the right situation. Then I have Jimmy G. I don't really know how to feel about him. At sometimes, I feel like he's just a game manager. At his best, I think he could be slightly more than that. I think he's above average at best. If I was a competing team, I don't really think I would look into him being my quarterback. He did well with the 49ers. They went to the Super Bowl, but I think that had a lot more to do with their defense than with him and their running game. Then after him, I have Teddy Bridgewater. I feel like his best days are behind him. I like Teddy. I think he's a good leader, great for a quarterback room, but not an ideal starting quarterback at this point in his career. And then just at the end, I slotted in Marcus Mariota. Just because it's not even a knock on him. I just think the quarterbacks above him are better. But he's an interesting project. I feel like the league right now is better suited towards what he was coming out of college than it was when he actually came out of college. And he showed some signs in that one game that he was able to get in and play that, maybe he has the potential to be a starting quarterback, even if it's not for a top-tier team. So I would like to see him get a shot somewhere. I loved him in Oregon, and hopefully he does get a second chance. Now, my question to you, a guy that I didn't include in here, if Tua was on this list, where would you put him on your list? Because he's been talked about in Deshaun Watson rumors. I know they've said he's their guy, but
I guess I slot him in behind Wentz, above Bridgewater and Garoppolo. But Watson, Carr, Wentz, Cousins, way above Tua at this point, at least. Sam Darnold's like on the fringe. We'll see what's up with him. Because Sam Darnold has the talent, but he hasn't performed. And, you can say the offensive line, all this and all that, but he hasn't shown improvement since his rookie season. So at some point, the excuses have to stop, right? So we'll see. But I think I would slot Tua right there in the middle. But I do think the Dolphins are going to stick with Tua. I think that's their guy. I don't, even though he played bad in his last week of the year, I think that the Dolphins aren't going to be, just switching out quarterbacks.
The only
every
way they
time
would
one
move on
struggles.
from him is for Deshaun Watson, I feel like. And even that, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't even think because to this point, there have been no reports that any team has been in talks about getting Deshaun Watson.
I've heard
It's
that,
just been rumors.
Yeah, I've heard that every team that has called them has been shut down. And they have stood by they're not going to trade him, which I think is ludicrous. I mean, I understand you should want to keep your guy in Deshaun Watson, but at some point, you've turned the page on doing that. And it just seems like every report that comes out from the Texans, it's almost like a joke at this point. Like just this past week, they fired their equipment manager and his staff, who was supposedly beloved by Deshaun Watson, J.J. Watt, and the rest of the roster. And it's like, what's the game plan? Where are you going with this?
Yeah, I think the Texans right now are a stubborn organization that are out to prove a point of dominance. And because of that, that's why I don't think Deshaun Watson will get traded, because I think regardless of how much value they're going to get back, they are just not going to let go of Deshaun Watson just to prove a point to Deshaun Watson that he doesn't have the power and where he goes with his career that they do. And that way, they're going to hope that Deshaun Watson ends up caving in and plays with the Texans so he gets paid.
That's a big gamble to make, because if he calls their bluff and say he even goes as far as retiring, now you're going into next season still in really poor cap situation with no extra added value and no quarterback. At least if you trade Deshaun Watson, you get back a replacement quarterback and maybe draft a quarterback. But if he retires, you get no quarterback to start next season, and you have no extra assets like you would get from him. So it's a dangerous game.
That's the thing. I think that they're okay with playing that, because even if they're the losers in this situation, they would feel like the winners, because they would ultimately, in doing that and not trading him and Deshaun Watson ultimately retiring, Deshaun Watson has taken years off his career.
They can feel like the winners, but not only would they lose now, but it would hurt them moving forward too, I think, because I think Deshaun Watson is a very well-liked and very well-respected guy around the league, and I think guys would see him get, I don't want to say disrespected, but mishandled by the Texans, and it would kind of be like when we talked about James Harden and the way that deal went down. I think they got a better offer from the Sixers, but James Harden wanted to go to Brooklyn, and as ugly as it seemed on the outside, they still appeased him and wanted to make things better for him. And I think guys around the league respected that. The Texans are walking a very dangerous line, and even if they think they're winning, not only would they lose to Deshaun Watson, but they would lose the rest of the league.